Welcome back on the Good Morning Artesia radio show. Again, thanks to our friends at McDonald's for helping us out with our breakfast for the staff and our guests. Let's see, do we have any staff left, Kirk? I'm trying to think. Getting kind of thin around here. We had a couple people leave, and we hired a new employee, and they gave their notice, and then promptly got into a car wreck.
Ooh.
So they're better. They're okay. But they may not actually start on the day that we were hoping they were going to start, because they've got to...
Does make it a little tough.
Make it tough. So glad you could come in today and chat with us. And I think the big thing that people have been talking about, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of questions at Lowell's Pharmacy over, is this outbreak of cases with COVID, especially here in Eddy County. We seem to be... I was telling my friend from Texas this week, you are talking to somebody who is smack dab in the middle of the reddest, reddest part of New Mexico when it comes to COVID cases. But actually, I'm about 40 miles north of the super hot zone. But what kind of tell us what's going on with all these cases? What do we know?
Not a whole lot, other than it's I just don't want to sound like another just rhetoric
right
type person, but typically we are one of the least vaccinated counties percentage wise, and that does give us the opportunity, I think, for having a larger group of unvaccinated people to become infected. That's essentially it. I hate to tell people, yes, you need to get vaccinated, and because that's tends to actually be polarizing politically.
Right.
I think it's a good idea. I don't tell people, don't yell at their face because they don't want to get vaccinated. It's to me, it's a personal choice, and you take your own health into consideration. Do you need it? Do you not? That type of thing. So me personally, I think it is a good idea. There may be some reasons that some people don't want to get vaccinated. I do get frustrated with just the anti-vaccine type people that are just, it's a vaccine, therefore it's bad. That type of thing.
It's not the first vaccine that we've ever had available to the general public, and it won't be the last vaccine.
I'm sure that's correct. So I do like the different ways that I guess some of the Republican governors across the country are not requiring people to get it. To me, that is the way to go. But because I'm a person that likes individual freedom and individual choice, and that's my thinking, and that's why I have the opinions that I do of whether to get vaccinated or not. I do think there's a lot of medical information behind it. It shows that it's good, it works. There's been very, very few really bad side effects. There's been more side effects than a general vaccine, your flu vaccine or whatever. I'm not saying there's not been any, but the really bad side effects has been very, very, very few. So I do think it's a safe vaccine. People ask me what my opinion is. Yes, my opinion is you should get vaccinated, but I also like to temper that with personal choice, and there may be a few medical conditions out there where it may be in your best interest not to get the vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. Regarding the vaccine, the FDA, I saw an article this week that the FDA may actually certify I'm not sure if it's both or all three or one of them, but that they may, because right now it's being deployed under an experimental.
Correct. Emergency use.
Emergency use. That by Labor Day, they could have completed whatever research that they need to conduct in order to certify it as a official vaccine or a safe
Correct.
vaccine.
Yeah.
What as a part of the process, what has to happen, or what are they looking at to change it from experimental use to approved use? What's that process like?
It's looking at the research that's been gathered, because as any drug, prescription drug gets put on the market, and these vaccines are considered prescription drugs. There's four phases that the FDA goes through and looks at. Phase one is a small group of healthy people. Generally speaking, phase two is a larger but still small group, generally of people that have whatever condition the drug is supposed to be treating. Now, vaccines, since they're supposed to be prevention instead of a treatment, I don't know exactly what those circumstances are, but
they send them unmasked into a big box store is what they do.
It could be something along that lines. It sure could.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure they have a protocol, but that just kind of comes to mind,
And then once they pass through that phase two, phase three is what they call large multi-centered testing places. And generally speaking, most drugs will go through 8 to 10, maybe 12, maybe up to 15 different centers across the country where they are treating probably a couple of thousand people at each one to get a large group of individuals that are participating in this phase 3 trial. So what President Trump did back when he was in office and this first came along, he gave an executive order, I believe. I don't remember exactly how it came about, but he allowed or encouraged the FDA to do all three phases at one time, which generally they do not do. They'll do, it's phase one, you go on through. Phase 4 is after the drug has been released to the market. It's what's called post-market surveillance. So,
and that's what we're in now, basically.
And essentially, that's what we are in. Any prescription drug that's out there, the FDA is interested in getting even more information of what has been going on since the drug has been released. And this essentially came about during the AIDS drug being developed, and there was this big kind of outcry, so to speak, to try and get these drugs, what they called fast-tracked, and that's when that first came along of fast-tracking a drug. But these people were getting sick and dying at a much faster rate than most I guess diseases at the time. So there was a lot of interest in trying to come up with medications that would slow down and hopefully that would stop the progression of AIDS or the conversion from, I forget the other acronym, into AIDS. And the FDA basically at that time allowed for a much shorter, much smaller trial for phase 3 drugs. But that's when this post-marketing post-release marketing surveillance came along. So it's really been since the, I guess, late 80s, early 90s, in that time frame that the FDA's been gathering information on drugs that have already been released. And
so the FDA says they may approve it by Labor Day. It's because they feel that they've gathered enough data from all the people. For example, in New Mexico alone, 1 million people have been fully vaccinated, 18 years of age and older. Well, and that's just in one state. So that's probably a pretty decent sample.
Yes.
Given how this has been, how widely this has been distributed. The other thing that I thought was interesting is I was reading this article from the NFL and the things that they've learned and the things that they're doing this year so they can have a season versus what they did last year, which was in the height of the pandemic. And one of the things the doctor talked about was that they're still testing vaccinated people.
Yes.
And they're gathering data from the vaccinated people as to, their exposure, asymptomatic, and so forth. Has the testing or what they use to test a person for positive COVID, has the material or what they're testing, has that changed or modified as we've gone along, or is the test today the same test that it was a year ago, or when we first started really testing people to see if they had COVID?
That part I am not 100% sure on. I do believe that the type of there was several types of tests that were produced early on. I do think those have probably been refined, but I do think to stay the same mechanism our test, from a lab point of view, the test probably is very much the same. By refining it, and they can make it a little bit easier in some ways to do the test, and there's different tests too. So what we had done briefly was kind of an antibody test that was a blood test where you stick your finger and put a drop of blood into a well, and you let it run kind of down a chromatic track and see if it, if there's antibodies there, it'll produce a line along that track. Most of your other tests are doing the nasal swabs or a throat swab, and they're actually looking for, and I believe it's proteins that are present in the virus itself. So it is not the antibody test is a have I already had this test. It's not really am I infected right now type test, where the nasal swab and the throat swab type things are more of a how right now type test. How am I doing? Am I infected?
Yeah.
Type thing. So there's a couple of different ways of doing these tests, and they tell you different things depending on what you're doing. So
yeah, but the protein thing, because that's probably how it's still effective for some of the variants, because of the proteins that are probably common amongst the different versions of the virus. We have to go to news. Can you stick around for a little bit? Okay. Stick around, folks. Kirk Irby will be with us. We'll talk more on the other side of the news.